But at the time, like, I thought I really knew everything I wanted in a rig. And looking back, I was so clueless. Like, it's so funny looking back at
I'm the same.
Welcome back to the Rangeless Travel Podcast. We're your favorite adventure travel hosts. I'm Britt, and this is Ryan. Together, we travel the world by plane, train, and 89 Ford Sportsmobile. Currently, we're traveling the U.S. in an old van with our 2 dogs, Layla and Cedar. Every Tuesday, we share stories and tips to inspire you to book that next trip. So go ahead and don't be shy. Follow along with us at Rangeless_ on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Let's dive in. This week, we are so excited to introduce our personal friend and this week's guest co-host, Lexi of Keeping Up with Cove. Now, you may recognize her from your TikTok and Instagram feeds, but if not, Lexi travels full-time in her van with her pup, Hadley May. And this week, she's sharing insider tips and her story of how she got into van life and chose her van, to what it's like being a solo female on the road, dealing with the inevitable ups and downs that come with that, including breakdowns of the van, of course, but like maybe depending on how this podcast goes, maybe it's personal breakdowns too. So here we are, Lexi!
Hello!
Hey, Lex.
And Hadley.
Hey, Lex.
Hey.
Oh, and there's Miss Hadley.
There she
Right
is.
on cue, Hadley girl.
All right, go lay down.
Now, Lexi, how did you discover van life and kind of come to the decision to be like, that's for me, that's what I'm doing?
So I went to college, and then I very quickly dropped out of college and went to work full time. And then after a couple years of working full time, I was like, oh my gosh, this cannot be the only thing I do with my life. And so I started doing a lot of research while I was sitting at the desk and realized I want to go travel, and found out about like working holiday visas and stuff like that. So I ended up actually applying for those first and got a job, had a house,
In
had plane
Australia,
ticket.
New Zealand?
Australia.
Where were you looking? Australia, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Australia, yep. I had everything set up, was ready to go over there, and that was at the end of 2019. So obviously COVID hit, everything shut down. And so then I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm kind of stuck here for a little bit longer. And so I kind of took the COVID time to do a lot of research and really kind of dive into everything about living on the road, nomadic living. It wasn't really van life in the beginning. I was really into schoolies. So I wanted like a full-size bus or like a big city bus, like accordion style, like double-decker. I wanted something big.
Oh, accordion?
Yeah. I wanted like the full bus accordion and then another full bus behind it. I literally almost bought one.
Oh my God.
Let's just think about that for a second. But yeah, so I kind of dove into that, and I really, even then, I wasn't committed to it though. I just kind of had the idea in my head, and then I was like, okay. Then I started actually looking online and searching and doing all the things. But then I went into schoolies, and then it just kind of like gradually got smaller and smaller once I realized that I'm going to have to be the one doing everything. Driving it, fixing it, like plumbing, doing all the things. I was like, okay, I can't do all of that. And so then it finally went down to van size, and yeah, then I found my van.
So what kind of van do you have?
I have a 1993 E250, and it's a 94 Coachman. Basically, Coachman, the RV company, took my Ford at the time, just like a regular work van, and then converted it into an RV professionally. And then,
Which is similar to us, because we have the E250 too, but we have like your van's mom.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's a couple years older, and it's the sports.
And then ours took the Sportsmobile took it and like made it.
Yeah.
A very similar, like it's different, but it's definitely like has some crossover.
Yeah, no, for sure. They are very, very similar. Yeah, but since it got converted at the factory, it's had a billion other owners. No, not a billion. I think like 3 other owners before me, and 3 or 4. And so it's been like fixed and done here and done there, different things added and taken away. So when I got it though, it was like pretty close to the original. Like it had the bathroom and the shower. It didn't have the tub. I wish it had the tub when I got it, but it didn't. It had like a shower pan. It had the toilet in the back and just kind of like all those things. So
did you have those non-negotiables when you first started looking into like the vans? Like when you were like, okay, I can't do the schoolie because it's a lot of work, which was my original thing that I went into as well. Like
well, you had a schoolie.
I had a schoolie. I bought one. A short
crazy.
one, not like a full one. And then it was the same thing though. Then when I started having to do all the work on it myself, I just felt like it was like really overwhelming, and I was like, I can't do this. And then I got an RV, like I got a Class C Mini Winnie, and then I was like, this is too big, and then I got the van. So a similar kind of trajectory. But when you first started looking for that van, like what was some of the non-negotiables that you were like, okay, like I have to have this, and this in the van, like I can't live without it?
Really, I didn't have like hard non-negotiables. For me, it was just kind of like I felt like I would just know when I saw the van, and I felt like it would just kind of like speak to me in a way. And because I went through so many different rigs, and actually when I found this van, I was very heavily considering two other rigs, and then this just happened to be the one I got. But at the time, like I thought I really knew everything I wanted in a rig, and looking back, I was so clueless. Like, it's so funny looking back at
I'm the same, yeah.
And even like after
I said to Britt, like
year,
Britt wanted to sell our van before we set out and get a different van, and I was like, no, we keep it. It's too cool. We don't want to sell it. And now I'm like, I think we could do it a little bit more space. There's two of us and two big dogs. Like we could do with some more space.
Especially with the pop-up, it makes it a lot smaller if you can't pop the top.
Yeah. But now, do you have non-negotiables? Like, how long have you been in your van?
A little over, I was trying to do the math, and I think I've always thought it was like closer to 3 years, but I guess it's only been like two and a half.
That's definitely long enough to now be like, okay, this is what I like want. And I know that recently you've talked about like getting a new rig, gutting your rig. But like, what are those non-negotiables after being on the road for like 2.5, almost 3 years? What are the non-negotiables you have now?
Once again, like they're not hard non-negotiables, but like I would definitely be so much more comfortable if I had like a couple things. And I think for me, it's just like a little bit more of an open layout, just a little bit more space. It is nice because it's just me. So like I can make do, and like I can deal with being uncomfortable a little bit. But since I'm full time in it, and, you know, been on the road for so long and not been home and kind of all those things, I would definitely love a little bit more space. I would like a better electrical, like solar setup, so I don't have to kind of like cut things like not using my microwave or not using my stove or, you know, different things like that. Like I could just do it and not worry.
You've got all the like portable battery packs, right? The like
I do.
The different like jackery kind of things, so you have to do the shuffle with those to go and get them charged up and things like that.
Right. And I would love, I'm like totally on, I love the solar generator, battery pack, whatever you want to call them. I love that for powering the van. And I don't think that I would go into like electrical, like hardwired batteries, but I would add solar panels to the top of my van. That would probably be my number one thing in the van right now. Would have actual solar panels on the top that run in, and then maybe like add an alternator charger. I know like the EcoFlow and all of those just came out with those too. Adding that would be nice. I think electrical is probably my number one, and then space. Really, I think that's it, honestly. Like everything else, like I could deal with, but like maybe having 4x4, maybe like kind of upgrading the van to be a little bit sturdier, but you know, she gets me a lot of places, so I can't complain too much.
Yeah. So. I've seen you on the Dempster.
Well, yeah, but, you know, it's never that serious. Yeah.
We went together. All three of us went all the way to the Arctic Ocean on the Dempster Highway. That's how we met. We met like 2 days before that. And then we were like, do you want to go do this? Yeah,
we're like, do you want to drive 1,200 miles to the middle of nowhere with me to the Arctic Ocean? Sure, why not?
Sign me up.
Absolutely.
We were all sitting at the North Pole and decided that on a whim.
We did. Literally North Pole, Alaska. It's right outside of Fairbanks, and we were both there, and we were like, should we just drive to the Arctic Ocean? Yes, we should. Going back to rigs, what would you recommend for someone who's like looking into getting a rig? What are some of the things that like you would tell them to be like to make sure that they get a rig that like fits their needs?
Definitely a lot of research, and like real research. I think when I was researching before, it was really just watching like a lot of YouTube videos. And at that point, like even, you know, a couple years ago, Vanlife was nothing like it is now. And I think there's so much more information out there. You can really learn so much more about it, and like just figuring out what you're comfortable with, and, you know, the community that you have around you and who you'll have to help and things like that. You know, should you get a new van and be making a payment or get a loan or however you can do that? Or should you get an older van? And then like with each of those, it comes different things. You know, if you get a new van, mechanically it's a lot more like computerized and electronic, and you'll probably have to go to like a certain kind of mechanic or whatever. Whereas like with our old vans, it's kind of like, you know, Joe Schmo in like a little country town can probably fix something if we need it.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge thing.
There's going to be pros and cons to every rig.
Everything. So just kind of figuring out what you're comfortable with, and then really thinking hard about your layout, and if you're willing to change it in the future. You know, if you buy a rig and you're like, gosh, you know, this rig is so, I got it, I took it to the mechanic, it's so great, it has low miles, it's going to be such a good van, but like I hate the way it's laid out inside or whatever. Like, are you willing to fix that? Because that's a lot of work. Or, you know, are you willing to pay somebody to do that? Because that's a lot of money. So it's kind of like just figuring out all the things that you want or need. Do you need two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive? Like, what do you want? And when I got my van, I wasn't even really, I mean, I thought about four-wheel drive, but coming from Florida and like not really adventuring out much, like I didn't really think that it was necessary at all. Because I'm thinking four-wheel drive in my head, going like mud bogging, like what, I'm not gonna be doing that in my van. Why would I need that? And now I realize like it would come in handy.
You're like, that's my house.
Yeah, like, but I also will say it's definitely not necessary. Like I've gone so many places and made it in two-wheel drive that you just have to be a little more cautious and check it out more. I think just in general, figuring out what your needs are and like what you want to do and what's your purpose of traveling and living this lifestyle.
I think you touched on some really good points there that I want to like elaborate on a little bit, which is figuring out what your needs are, because it can be so hard if all you've ever done is watch like day of my life videos or like vlogs on YouTube of people living van life, to be like, what are my needs? Because I feel like in this community forever, like how many people are in van life community, which is, it's a pretty small community. There's like that many different needs. And I think one of the best ways to figure that out is to, before you do it, rent a van. Rent things 100%. For the weekend, like rent it, and then like go out and see if like, oh, maybe you need like a full RV, or maybe you think you need an RV, but then you like get in it and you're like, actually this is a pain because I want to go into cities, and when I'm in cities I can't
bring an RV.
I can't bring an RV because I can't park it because it can't be stealth, you know, like a van's going to be better for me. So I think I would recommend to like anyone who's like looking, who hasn't done it, to just go and like rent a couple different options. Like don't just like go on Facebook Marketplace, where like most of us are finding our vans on Facebook Marketplace, I feel like. And then just like be like, that's the one. I'm getting that, and like I've never done it before. I highly recommend. Because so many of us, I feel like, get a rig and then like fit it out or like make all these customizations or whatever it is, get out in it, and then you'll hear people like, yeah, I went through 3 rigs in 3 years. Or it's my second year of van life and I'm on my second rig, because what happens is we move into them and then we realize the things we need and we don't need. So I think my word of advice is, before you even start looking, just like go rent something. And go on a couple like epic trips. Because like van life is basically camping all the time.
Yeah,
all the time. Yeah.
So like you can be like, oh, van life looks awesome. And then you go out and you're like, wait a second, I think I hate it.
Yeah, and then you spend like 6 months building out a rig on how you like it or whatever, and you think you have hit everything, and then you go out and you actually use it day in, day out, day in, day out. And I found, for one thing, like with van life, if it's not easily accessible, like if I can't get to it within 2 seconds, I'm not touching it. Yeah. It's buried, it's back there somewhere. It should just be, I just need to get rid of it because I can't get to it, so I'm not going to go and get it.
Right. 100%.
But then some people don't mind that. Like I know a lot of people don't have, you don't have like a fixed stove range. Yours like goes away, right? Your little propane stove?
Yeah, everything in my van, like nothing's really fixed except for like my sink.
Yeah.
So
and like, I find that so annoying. I'm like, I need everything 100%. Just fixed. Like I need fixed everything. If it's not fixed, like I just don't want it. Like I essentially like my space to be just like a tiny studio apartment.
Yeah, for me, so the stove is actually something that I struggled with a little bit. So when I originally got my van, it did have it had a convection top. What do you call that? Like a convection top? Yeah. So, but it was electric, and using it just took too much power, and I didn't have the power set up. And once again, like going back to the power setup, like if I had it, would have been so nice. But I took that out, and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to use a propane stove, like a Coleman 2-burner stove. And I kept putting it away in my storage drawer, and stuff was on top of it and everything. And I realized that I was not cooking because it was just a pain to take everything off top of the storage and move Hadley and take the blankets down and then get in there and then take out my paddleboard and take out my chair and then get the stove. You know, it was just like a pain. So then I started putting it on top of like above my fridge, and that made it so much easier. So definitely like accessibility to things that you're going to be using every day, or just dedicate a space to like basic needs like cooking and stuff. That's what you need to dedicate space towards, for sure. And like also going back to the figuring out your needs, what are you going to be doing? You know, like, are you going to be out there boondocking for like 2 weeks at a time? Or are you going to be like 20 minutes from a city and, you know, like down a Forest Service road and you're only like 20, 30 minutes away and you'll go in every couple days and top off on water and all that stuff? Or, you know, are you going to be out there in the middle of nowhere for weeks at a time?
We talked about this too, because we were like, oh, seasonal work would be so awesome to go and work at like a ski resort, or to go and work at like a beach or like a tourist spot in the summer, and then like ski resorts in the winter. But then like we were like, wait, our rig isn't set up to do that, first of all. No. And second of all, like, it's a pop top. Like it just like doesn't work for like that kind of stay. So if you're looking like, you're like, oh, I want to do van life, but I'm looking at seasonal work, an RV may be a better option for you, because those seasonal jobs a lot of times will give you a plug-in.
Right, yeah,
I would
plug-in.
say if
That's
you're doing
huge.
seasonal work, you're better off with a travel trailer and leave the trailer there, and then you can go and take your vehicle wherever you want to go.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, plugins are huge too. I think a lot of people think camping and think about traveling and van life and RVing, and they think about, oh, I'll just like be getting campsites, or oh, like, you know, we'll be camping, and like to us it's like we know that we'll be boondocking, but I think to them they're like, oh, getting a campsite or finding like something on iOverlander. I think a lot of people that I talk to that aren't in van life expect there to be hookups and stuff, and there's not anywhere. Like this entire past year, I think I've hooked up like twice somewhere, and like that's only because I like knew people.
We haven't done it yet.
We've never hooked up. We've been in the van for like a year. We've never hooked up.
Last time she's been plugged in was when we were at your dad's house fixing it. And that was it.
Yeah. And it's funny, actually, when I got this van, I thought that was so nice. I'm like, oh my gosh, it has shore power already. Like, that's so nice. I'm going to, like, I have a huge AC on the top of my van. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to run AC all the time. Well, guess what? That AC doesn't work unless I'm on shore power. And guess when I'm on shore power? Yeah. Never. So, like, you know, like, you kind of have to look past those things and, like, what you're actually doing and where you're going to be. So, but yeah, if you're doing, like, seasonal work and they're like, hey, we have a plug-in and this and that, or you're, you know, doing a camp host or something and you can plug in, that's going to be a different type of rig altogether.
I know for us, we tend to stay in a place for like 2 weeks at a time and then bounce to the next spot to 2 weeks, just because ours is a pop top, and like there's so much that goes into like popping and dropping the top that like it's a good like 30 minutes to an hour just to get moving. Whereas like someone who has like a hard top or a high roof van, for the most part, it's just like putting things away in drawers and then you're ready to go.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely am a very faster traveler, but I think a lot of people do that in the first year or two. I think they're, you know, or people who are kind of taking like a gap year or something I've talked to, and they're, you know, they want to see as much as possible and go hit all these things before this season ends. And, you know, I don't know if I'm going to be doing it next year, but now that I'm into it more and I know that it's something long term for me that I'm going to be doing for a few years, I'm definitely ready to slow down a little bit and stay places a little bit longer rather than moving every couple days, because it is convenient to move, you know, whenever I want. I have, you know, a high roof, and I just throw things in a drawer and move on. Right now, Lexi, you're down in Florida, where you're from, visiting family, doing all like the holiday things, which is very common in van life. But you are full-time, and you've been full-time for a while. What does that look like for you as a solo female traveler? You know, in a lot of ways it's different, but also in a lot of ways it's the same as living anywhere as a solo female. And I think that for me personally, I mean, I take a lot of steps to be safe and be prepared, just like you would anywhere. But I personally think that I feel a lot safer and a lot more comfortable on the road rather than even in my hometown where I grew up and stayed for, you know, 19, 20 years. I think I'm sure there's people listening right now that like are like, that's actually mind-boggling. Like, I'm sure there's so many people right now. They're like, how could you ever feel more safe on the road? But I'm with you with this. I usually feel more safe on the road, but like people just like don't understand. 100%.
Yeah, and I totally get that because like if you run into an issue like anywhere, if you're living in your house, it's not very hard to find out where someone lives, and then like you're stuck there, you're not going to leave. You could get like a stalker or like some sort of other issue. But like with the van, you can literally just take off into the sunset and be gone and be somewhere else, and they have no idea where you're at, you know?
My explanation, kind of justifying why I feel like that and trying to explain it to people who it is mind-boggling for, because I totally understand that. Probably I'd say the majority of people I talk to and say that, they think I'm actually insane. But my reasoning is, like, if you live in a town... If you live in a town and you live in a home and you have the same routine every day and you walk your dog down the block through downtown New York or, you know, California, Georgia, whatever, wherever you are, you do that every single day. And you take that same routine, and it's not hard for somebody to see you and be like, okay, every morning at 8 a.m. before she goes to work, she does this. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're talking about the safety factor, you let your guard down a lot. You know, you have your headphones on, you're listening to a podcast, to music, you're not focused on what you're doing. And I think that makes you so much more vulnerable. And I think people really jump on crimes of convenience and just kind of taking advantage of people. Whereas when I'm in the van, I'm always somewhere new. So I'm kind of scoping it out. I don't go on long walks or hikes or runs with headphones in. You know, I'm always getting somewhere before it gets dark to try to check it out and get the lay of the land and see who's around me. And if I see someone that's, you know, back behind the trees on a trail, like, I'm tuned into that. You know, I see them, I know them. So then if I see them later, I'm going to be concerned. Whereas on a walk in a town, I'm like, oh, you know, they probably live in this house right here. But if you're in the middle of the woods, it's like, why are you this close to me? Get away from me. You know, like, I think that's like a huge thing that people just don't really think about. And the fact that you, like you said, you can just get in your van and leave.
But I think that's something that, like, as women, like, we're all doing that all the time. Like, we're always like, that's different. That's off. The vibes are off. The vibes are off. We're not going today. But I think what you're saying is, like, yeah, we as women are always so vigilant, because I don't think it's, when we say, like, oh, people are mind boggled by being like, oh no, we feel more safe on the road. It's not, we're not talking about fellow women for the most part.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, we're talking about with men when, like, who are like, no, there's no way. What does your dad think? I would never let my daughter do that.
Never. I would never. Oh my gosh. I just couldn't imagine my daughter or granddaughter doing that. That's so unsafe for a young girl. You know, you should really, I get this one a lot, that I should dye my hair. I don't know why they think that's okay to tell me, but they're like,
oh, I do dye my hair.
Yeah. I'm like, I work hard for this hair. But they're like, no, a young blonde girl doing this, you cannot do that. Or, you know, just kind of like all those things. And I'm just like, you know, it can happen anywhere. So might as well be doing what you want to do.
Yeah, because you love spending your winters in Baja.
I do. 100%. Yes.
And I'm sure those same people are the ones that are like, you can't go to Mexico. That's dangerous.
So much. I get that. That's probably the biggest thing I get, 100%. So when I meet people and tell them, or, you know, like my dad's friends or my mom's, whenever I'm telling somebody a story and I'm like, oh, I live in my van and I travel across North America and I've done Canada and Alaska and Mexico. You went to Mexico? You didn't drive to Mexico? I'm like, yeah, I drove all the way down to Cabo. And they're like, oh my gosh, how, you know, like they just can't believe that I'm standing in front of them still alive. So I definitely get that a lot.
And you're here to tell the tale?
Yeah, for sure. They're like, I can't believe you didn't. Yeah, they're just always surprised I'm still there to tell the story.
That you live to tell the tale of going to Mexico and driving through. Now, I do know, and like, I know we've kind of singled out men a little bit here, right? And it's not just men, in fairness. No. It's not just men that look at you and they're like, oh my gosh, you're actually insane. Someone get this girl, like, to a nunnery, get her committed, like, she needs help. Someone call Dr. Phil, like, she needs serious help. Also, there's a lot of women that want to live this lifestyle, right? But they're afraid to do it
100%.
Because, like, it can be scary. Because I did it solo for years before he came along. And, like, it's scary to, like, park out in forestry roads by yourself at night. It's scary to be like, yeah, I'm going to drive to the Arctic Ocean by myself, which you did once and with us a second time. It's scary to say, I'm going to take my whole life, uproot it, everything I know, like, take all the stability of being in a community, you know, around family and friends, and like move into a van and take off. So what would you tell women who like are looking at this lifestyle, listening to this podcast, watching this video and saying, I wish I had the cojones that this girl has because I want to do that, but I'm scared?
Honestly, could tell them so much, but the biggest thing is just that you can do it. You just have to believe in yourself, and you have to be able to take a little bit of a risk, because this lifestyle is not for everyone. And, you may fantasize about it a lot and get into it and then hate it. And that's okay. I think you just have to kind of set yourself up for success. And whether that comes to you or not, I think that ultimately the point is that you can do it. And you've probably gone through so much in your life that, to me, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I could never do that. Cheers to that lady. Working even just in corporate or a big girl job, I could never, that's how I think. And you're doing that, or having kids, or having a house and paying a mortgage and doing all that kind of stuff. That's all super foreign and crazy to me. But I know that if I settled down and tried something like that, I know that I could do it. And I think that this lifestyle is just a little bit more taboo and not talked about. And, you don't really hear about it. It's just something that came up within the past few years. So I think that's the biggest thing, is that you can do it, and you just got to kind of set yourself up for it.
Yeah, it's just taking those first steps to be out of your comfort zone.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And yeah, that's a good way to put it, is being okay with being out of your comfort zone, because it's not going to be comfortable. Yeah. Let me tell you, I didn't grow up camping. I didn't grow up in the outdoor space in that way. I grew up in Florida, on the beach and on the boat and in the water, island style, not mountains, woods, camping style, which is a lot of what I do now. And it's uncomfortable. You have to pee outside. You have to poop outside. Mm-hmm. You have to find water source and fill it up and maybe filter it, and be okay with not having a shower for a few days, and finding where you're going to get your food and gas and dump your tanks and get power. All that stuff is uncomfortable, and you just got to be okay with that and figuring that out. And it's going to be tough at first, but you can do it. It's no different once you get used to it than any other thing you do in your life.
Me and Ryan talk about that a lot. We call them growing pains, because those things, to get used to them, takes so much mental weight, mental load. If they hold heavy on you, you're I don't know. Even as little as when you're stagnant somewhere, you go to the same grocery store every week, but then when you're traveling a lot, you get to know all these different grocery stores that you have to go to, so you don't always know where the best deal is. You don't know your way around them, right? So that in itself can be stressful. But the more you do it and the more you step out of that comfort zone, the more you're growing. Because there's a quote that's if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. The only way to grow is to be uncomfy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the benefits are going to outweigh the cons, at least for me personally. But it's also important to remember, you can live van life, and it doesn't mean it's forever. you touched on it before. You're maybe it's not. You're it's, for me, it's the foreseeable future, right? For us, it's the foreseeable future. But you can totally take a 3-month sabbatical and go and do a road trip, and that can be your van life. You don't have to be oh, I have to move into a van, and now it's my whole personality, and I'm gonna have to live in a van for the rest of my life. It doesn't have to be that.
Definitely not.
Everyone's doing van life to do different things. We always say that we're doing van life to give ourselves the space to chase a dream and build out our own business and be content creators and build out our own skill set of photography and videography and build out our YouTube and this podcast and all of the things, right? Because if we had a mortgage we had to pay every month, or a high rent we had to pay every month, and we were going 9 to 5 every day to make someone else's dreams come true, we wouldn't have the space mentally, physically, emotionally to go and get better and chase the things we want to do. So we're this lifestyle for us, we make the sacrifices and live in a van so that we can build the things out that we want to chase.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people, because of the way that van life has been portrayed on social media and kind of glamorized in a way, and I think a lot of people think that that every van lifer is, trying to be a content creator, trying to make it big on social media, trying to do all these things, and that is so not the case. Honestly, the van life community itself, nomadic community itself, is small in comparison to a lot of other communities. And then the group inside of that that's trying to you know, just travel and gallivant and do all the things all day long and not have a job and, you know, all of that stuff, that's even smaller. So I know so many people that live van life and travel and like will go to Baja for the winter, but from 9 to 5 during the day, they're sitting inside their van, working on their computer, working remote, doing the things. Or I know people who will, you know, they're part-time remote, and so they have to fly home for conferences or for office meetings or whatever, once or twice a month or however their schedule is. Every single person's van life journey is different, and it doesn't have to be the same as everyone else. And so I think that just goes back into your needs and knowing what you want and your lifestyle and what you're looking to get from van life. And just because you see it on social media portrayed a certain way doesn't mean that it has to be how you do it too.
Yeah. Because the people that are building out platforms and doing content creation, those are obviously the people that you're going to see the most, because they're the ones creating stuff. You know, a lot of the times you don't see the people who are just like, they just work remote, and where a lot of people work seasonally, and they're like, okay, like we're from an area in New Jersey where there's a lot of people who like bartend seasonal, right? Or they lifeguard seasonally, or like they're semi-retired, so they work a few months out of the year and then they have a few months off. Or landscaping is seasonal, right? So you might have off for like the month of like December, January.
Right. People who do pools. Yeah,
people that do pools, right?
Yeah.
So like they'll have months, and maybe they like shoot to Mexico if for a couple, like 2 months, and they're just like living it up, and every day they're snorkeling and spearfishing and swimming and surfing and doing all the things. But then what you don't see is when they're home and they're working like 80-hour weeks so that they can go and do that again for 2 months. So I think that's a common setup as well.
Right. And that's like me right now. I'm home and I'm not traveling, but if you go and take a peek at my Instagram or like my social TikTok, anything right now, I'm still posting stuff and catching up from trips I've been on, you know, and so you're not going to know that I'm in Florida. I mean, I'm telling you right now, but you know, if you looked at my page, you wouldn't be like, oh, she's back in Florida, and you probably won't be able to tell that for a few weeks. So I think those people who do that.
But that's a good thing. But that's a good thing as a solo female. Like, you don't want them to know where you are.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip, just like for anyone in general. When you're living that kind of lifestyle, a good safety tip is like, don't post 100% in real time.
No. Yeah, you should never post in
Most
real time.
people aren't. Most people aren't. Occasionally we'll post in like kind of real time, but like it's like we're in a city.
Yeah.
Like we're in a city. Like, what do you mean? Like
we're in a desert somewhere. Like,
we're in a desert
good luck finding
somewhere.
us, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so things like that, I think is always just a good safety thing, especially for a solo female, but for anyone. And then I know something that keeps a lot of people, like women particularly, from jumping off the road is they're afraid of their van breaking down. They're like, what if I get stuck somewhere and I can't fix it? Now, Lexi, I feel like you are the queen of the breakdowns. You're just like, that's the, like you are like the chaos queen.
Yeah. I will take that crown and wear it proud. Always.
But you always figure it out, make it out. Do you have mechanic experience? Did you have mechanic experience going into it? Like, what gave you the confidence to be like, don't worry about breakdowns, I got this?
Absolutely not. I know nothing and knew nothing coming into it. I mean, literally nothing, y'all. Like, literally nothing. And so I think the biggest thing is it's going to happen. And you have to, budget for that. You know, if you don't have mechanical experience, like I didn't, you have to have a safety fund or like a fallback fund or whatever, emergency fund in case things happen, because they will 100% happen and you're not going to expect them. And I think that's part of getting on the road too. So much happens in your first like 4, 5, 6 months of van life that you're gonna have to be shoveling out the funds for, and then you kind of get used to it. But for me personally, mechanically, I knew nothing, and I have a 30-plus-year-old van, so I had to figure it out very, very quickly. And I had to, in the first year, spend so much money getting everything situated when I went by myself. But I've learned so much. You know, like very basic things, but those basic things have come in so handy to get me by until I can get to a shop or get help, or until I can get phone service to call my dad or phone a friend or call Ryan or whatever and be like, what the heck is going on? Because that happens.
It does happen, yeah.
It does. But yeah, I break down all the time. And breakdowns are not always super serious. And they can seem like very daunting, and you're sitting there with your hood open like, okay, what is it now? Like, a good example was me going up the Dalton Highway and breaking down 800 miles in the middle of nowhere with no one when I was completely by myself, thinking that it was the end of the world and I was literally going to die out in the wilderness all alone. And then it was just a battery connection. And like,
for anyone that doesn't know, what is the Dalton Highway? For anyone who doesn't know what the Dalton Highway is, Lexi, please tell them what it is.
It is an 800-mile stretch of completely dirt, pothole-filled roads that leads from Fairbanks, Alaska, up to the very top of Alaska to the Arctic Ocean. So quite literally at the top of North America. And you're literally in the middle of nowhere.
And it is Ice Road Truckers, right?
Ice Road Truckers. Yes, that's what it's most famous from, is the same road.
It's Ice Road Truckers.
Yep, that's the road. So that's where I was.
That's the one. That's the one that you broke down on.
That would be it. Yep. I was up there, broke down by myself. And not only was I on that road, but I was about 8 miles off that road. So just like off in a little camp area, away from everyone, not on the main road. So it was just very stressful with a storm coming in. And, in that moment, though, you have to figure it out. Like, that's the thing. You have no other choice. So you're going to figure something out. Well, I cried. First a lot, and then once I was done crying, once no more tears came out, I figured it out, and I had a Starlink. And I think that is a huge thing safety wise. I mean, now with the new iPhone update and satellite texting and stuff, it's not as necessary, but having the Starlink was huge for me in that moment, because I was able to get connection and call around and figure out what I could do to fix the situation. But ultimately I ended up finding some people, flagging them down, trying to get them to help me out, which was like 1 in a million. I was so lucky that those people came semi near me and I could get them. But
wait, they were like random dudes, right?
Yeah, a random couple. Yeah. Well, I had actually seen them before on the route down in Coldfoot. They had also gone up to the top to the Arctic Ocean, and they were on their way back down, and they had came back into the camping area because they had left something at the campground where they were 2 days prior. So it was honestly pure luck that they were out there, because no one else was. And I flagged them down, asked them if they could jumpstart me for one last ditch effort. I'd already tried to charge my battery, tried to do it all. Turns out there was just a bunch of dirt on the battery connection area. So even when I had connected it and tightened it down, it wasn't actually like sparking or whatever you want to call it. It wasn't
like connecting.
Connecting, yeah. It just wasn't connecting right. And once they came and helped, we scraped it off a little bit, did it again, one last try, and then boom, she turned on. So it's not always that serious. Moral of the story is you can figure stuff out, and kind of test things out and look it up. And YouTube is a great source. I also have mechanical manuals for the van. Those are huge.
Yeah.
Especially for old vans. That's why I kind of lean towards telling people to get something a little bit older, because it's so straightforward. I'm no mechanical genius, but I can read something and it goes step by step and tells you the tools you need and the exact parts and how this connects here, and it has diagrams. The older stuff is so well organized and thought out and explained that it's so helpful for sure.
And then we broke down together.
We have. Several times because we went on the Dempster Highway. Ryan's itching. He's like, I need to tell them more about the Dempster Highway. Yes.
So the Dempster Highway, you did the Dalton by yourself, and then we did the Dempster together, and we drove all the way to the Arctic Ocean in Canada, and we broke down. Did we both break down on the Dempster?
No, we didn't break down.
We didn't break down. Just you broke down?
Lexi broke down a couple times.
Just Lexi broke.
Well, not broke down, but yeah, your windshield wiper stopped working.
Oh yeah,
that's not really a breakdown, but
on that road it is, because again, it's not paved, it's gravel, it's muddy and potholes,
and
so
dust and dirt and everything.
And she was following us, so we're just blowing all the dirt onto her windshield, and her wipers aren't working. We don't know. We pulled over to help someone else that had a blowout.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then we were like, oh no, Lexi's also broken. So then we tied strings.
That's right. That was Lexi's idea.
Lexi
she got the little bit of paracord, and then just like out of a cartoon.
While I was
Something
driving.
out of Looney Tunes, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
While I was driving, I'd have to slow down and pull one side, and then keep driving and wrap the other side around my hand, and then pull it the other way just to clear it. Yeah, it was great. And then, okay, wait, we didn't tell the best part. When we were stopped to fix my windshield wipers, I left the key on, and then the van wouldn't start. So then, what did we do? We had to jump start the van.
We charged it up a bit, and then it didn't want to start still, but
The solenoid.
because your solenoid went bad.
Yep. And then we had to
So then you had to get your little wire and
Yeah,
and you had to hotwire that thing.
hotwire your van.
Hotwire that thing.
had to hotwire that thing, and then
that's
we
what
were back on the road. Yeah.
and then we made it to the Arctic Ocean. And then we were coming back, and all of a sudden Lexi's like, I thought my van was like playing some music, but I wasn't playing any music.
Yeah. So I'm driving down the road, and I forgot to download music before we left our campsite while we were on Starlink. And so I'm driving in silence. My radio's not on, my computer's not playing anything, my phone's not playing anything, and I'm trying to keep up with them. And so I'm like, I can't stop to download anything. But then all of a sudden my van starts playing music, and I'm like, okay, I'm delusional. Like, at this point, I'm really going crazy. And I'm like, maybe I'm just hearing things. Don't think anything of it. My van's also kind of like dragging a little bit, but I'm like, we're on a crazy road. Who knows? I just like roll up the window and tune it out. And then we stop for some reason to use the bathroom probably. And out of the corner of my eye, along the ground, I see my entire sway bar dragging. And I panic. And then Ryan comes over, and he had to literally hand saw it off and fix it. Yeah.
He was like, put this in your car.
Put it in the first dumpster you find.
Yeah, really. Yeah, so then I had to lug that big old thing back, and oh man, what an adventure.
Whatever happened? What dumpster did you put it in?
I actually carried that thing around until I got to Skagway. And then I finally found a dumpster, and I'm like, it's time to get rid of this. Yeah.
That's so far. I thought you would have gotten rid of it in Whitehorse.
I think I was just used to seeing it at that point, and I didn't even realize. But yeah, we fixed a lot of stuff on that trip. You also did my belt and my windshield wipers and something else too. My battery connections. You fixed a lot on that trip.
You had a short on the wire that went to your generator. That was no longer connected.
That was like sparking.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when it was sparking, I do remember that.
Yeah.
You fixed something else too.
Yeah. Oh, you locked yourself out.
Oh
my gosh. Okay, that's something I do often, but not anymore because I have 7 spare keys. So
we still have one of your spare keys, by the way.
Oh, perfect.
And
I've given one to everyone that I talk to. So I'm like, here, please keep this. Yeah.
And then we wrote your name on it in like paint marker, and it's like Lexi.
Yeah. Well, since then, within the first week of me getting those 7, I actually lost 2. So I guess now I have 5. Well, you have 1, and I think I have 2 spares now. So I probably should go get more, but yeah. Yeah, I locked myself out. Ryan had to break through we'll have to find that video. Ryan had to crawl through my fridge space.
Oh, I have the video. I had the video.
Yeah.
Crawl it. And it was the best Northern Lights that happened the entire...
Was the best Northern Lights that we saw the whole trip. And we were too freaking worried about being locked out. Well, it was also freezing cold out.
Because Hadley was locked in.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like we could have just been like, Lexi, we'll deal with it in the morning and you're coming to sleep in our van. It was like, no, Hadley was in there and she can't. It's too cold for Miss Hadley, so we had to get you in there.
Yeah. She would have been panicking all night, for sure.
There was no ifs, ands, or buts. We had to get into Hadley.
Yeah.
Look at that little girl.
Right.
Yeah, she's not built for the cold.
Thank you. Yeah, not at all.
What does your next van life bit when moving back into the van? What does that look like for you? Like, what are some things that you're looking forward to?
Yeah. So next locations, hopefully ASAP. Heading back to Baja. It's the one place, well, one of the top 2 places, maybe tied, that I just love so much. It feels like a little slice of home in a new location, and I just love Baja personally. I hopefully plan on spending the whole winter there, December, January time until March, April time, and then starting to head back up the coast, and then heading back to Alaska. Those are my only 2 things that I know I want to do.
You're driving back?
You're going back up?
You're driving back to Alaska?
That's the plan.
Wow.
Yeah. I kept justifying that whole trip as, oh, it's a once in a lifetime, but how can it be? I have to go back, you know?
Yeah, it's still a while away, but I know driving to Baja is something that a lot of people in the van life, like we're going to Baja. Basically, everyone we know who's doing van life is either going to Baja or planning on going to Baja. But I do know there's quite a lot of people that are a little bit like nervous or apprehensive about going down. So like, what would be some of your top recommendations for people looking to go down to Baja for van life?
One of the biggest things is it's not as scary as you think. Okay. Be prepared. It is, you're not in the US anymore. You do have to follow different guidelines and rules and laws and kind of all that stuff. I mean, it's like traveling anywhere else, and go in a caravan if you can. It's not hard to find people to caravan with. And if you personally are anyone's looking for someone, feel free to DM me. I have a million connections of people that are going and a bunch of groups that I can put you in to find people to caravan down with.
And where can they find you to DM you?
Yes, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, at Keeping Up with Cove. And I'm sure you guys will link it and everything.
Yeah, we're going to link everything down below as well.
Yeah. So, you can find me there. And I love talking about Baja just because I think it is so taboo to so many people. And it's becoming big now. It's becoming a thing where people are interested in going, and it's on social media and everyone wants to go down to Baja, but so many people are scared of it. And I have so many tips and tricks, and just being prepared is the biggest thing. Doing your research, you have to have like your FMM, which is basically like your approval to be in the country, and it's kind of like a visa in a way. And getting insurance, you have to have Mexican insurance. Your normal US policy very likely will not cover it. And there's just so many little things like that. When you cross the border, you can't go through certain lines or you will get fined, and things you can't bring with you, and just kind of all that stuff. It's really just being prepared, and don't be nervous. If you don't speak Spanish, also, I hear that a lot. They're like, I don't speak a lick of Spanish. Like, how can I go to Mexico? Obviously, I highly recommend learning the language or like being somewhat conversational, but you don't have to. I'm not very good at Spanish. Like, I can have a very basic, childlike conversation to get me by, but I don't think that that's completely necessary either. Google Translate is a great thing these days.
It's definitely helped us in a lot of places.
All right, that is it for this week's episode of the Rangeless Travel Podcast. Thank you so much for co-hosting, Lexi. We loved having you on. If you want more from us, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts, Instagram and TikTok, all at Rangeless_. And if you want more from Lexi, you can find her at Keeping Up with Cove on TikTok and Instagram.
Yes, TikTok and Instagram.
Thank you again for joining us, and until next week.
Bye.
Why'd you get a balloon?
She likes me.
I was like, only Lexi would be walking over to our van right now in the middle of the Arctic because she has a balloon.
What? Guess what?
What?
Her boyfriend has muck tuck for us.
Shut up.
Yeah. But maybe. She has to check, but we have to stop back here tomorrow.
Okay, that's fine.